Hello YouTube. Today we are going to be talking about stats in Destiny 2, specifically armor stats in Destiny. And I'm recording this live on stream while I'm helping people browse Osiris over on twitch.tv/Diffizzle. So if you're looking for a trials carry, make sure to head over there. Let's get into the stats now and kind of explaining what's happening with them and what you want to be looking for. I get a lot of questions regarding, isn't health a bad stat? Isn't weapon good? Isn't weapon bad? And the answer isn't really one way or the other necessarily. You know, it's more about how you want to build your character. And a lot of what you're building your character around is the weapon that you're using. So for example, I'm using a Cremil's dagger with this build. This is a weapon that doesn't really benefit from the weapon stat. Weapon stat at max can give you a 5% damage increase. So with that knowledge, you know that there's no point in speccing into weapon stat. So I build into health because health benefits like a peak shot kind of high damage tank build almost. And being able to have that over a player that say, you know, this is a build like this, which is the polar opposite of that. It is a high damage, right? I'm able to 2 burst this build, but it's at the cost of my health regeneration. Pretty much, this is how stat distribution works in the game now. The health stat and the weapon stat are these like you dump a bunch of stats into those. The reason you want to dump a bunch of stats into those is because the benefits of like damage and health regeneration, like for example, I will show you a chart right now. This chart shows at the bottom, this is stats, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And if you look, the yellow bar is representing the health regeneration, right? At all the way up to 100, it is the same. Only past 100, see any benefit for speccing into health. And a lot of people seem to think that, like, you know, there's a difference between 0 and 90, 0 and 100, and there isn't. It's a very big misconception. And it's the same way with weapon as well. Weapon is a stat where it benefits to damage in PvP in particular, and in PvE. Or in PvE you do get combatant damage, right? Like there's if you look at weapon, there's reload speed and handling, and then there's damage. And the damage is like, you know, increased weapon damage against minor combatants and major combatants. And that is good in PvE to some degree, like that does benefit you, but like in the PvE area of the game, you don't really want to build into weapon for handling, because the benefits of handling means that you're going to lose out on ability cooldowns. That's the thing, is you need ability cooldowns, right? Because you want to have good ability uptime. And if you don't, then you're going to be missing out on that. So you could, in theory, if you cared enough about handling, build into weapon, but logically, right, it just doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to make sure that you have like old 100 cooldown. A 45-second cooldown on my smoke is way more valuable than like a tiny bit more handling on a weapon, in my opinion. Way more value there. So that is kind of in PvP, and I would maybe say in PvE it's a little bit different because, you know, there's different builds. You can sometimes spec a lot into melee. If you're doing a melee build, spec a lot into grenade, where it's like, for example, if you are an Orpheus Rig Hunter, right? You don't want to spec into super damage because your super damage is not where your damage is coming from. Heather is a kind of a support super almost, where you're like applying debuff, generating orbs, controlling ads. So you want to then, in my opinion, focus on ability cooldowns and then weapon stat, because a lot of your damage will be coming from weapon with a build like this, or a build like Well, right? Like a build like Well, you're going to want to focus on ability cooldown and weapon damage, because your damage isn't coming from your super. And it's kind of that way across the game. And to talk about, like, for example, this is 70 on melee is old 100, and you want to have that. And same thing with grenade and class ability. And super in PvP in particular, there's a lot of questions in the community about whether or not it's important to have super. I think it is. I think it's very important. Even in PvE, I think it's important, because the difference between like 40 super and 100 is pretty substantial, I feel like. And that kind of wasn't the case before. I felt like you could have like 50 or 40 and you could get it really quick. And maybe you kind of can. And I'm not really a PvE monk. Like, I don't know a lot about PvE in that sense, but I feel like in some regards in endgame content, it is good to have high cooldown and high damage, you know, depending on your build. If you're building into like Thunder Crash, that's great. And even if you're on Well, I think it's a good idea to have a high super cooldown so you can have better uptime on your Well. But that's kind of like the gist. Pretty much covers all you need to know. And to recap, PvP in particular, health and weapon are like your main stats. So if you're using a weapon that's like a 120 or a 140, that is a weapon that doesn't benefit from weapon stat, then you want to build into health and then focus on ability cooldowns and super regeneration. And then if you're using a weapon that is like last Thursday, where it's like you want to build into that 2-tap, then you want to build into weapon and then ability cooldowns and super regeneration. And last Thursday is one example, but you could be using multi-mac with target lock, you could be using an auto rifle, be using a 180 hand cannon, right? But generally there's a trade-off, and I think it's really cool that it works this way, that there is a trade-off, that you could specialize into these builds where it's like you hit an even easier optimal TTK and the weapon and the playstyle becomes better, but there's a trade-off in that. And for a weapon build, the trade-off is that your health regeneration is very slow. If you're using a health build with a hand cannon, the trade-off is that you are sacrificing a quicker time to kill or a quicker health regeneration. That is a layer of depth in PvP in particular, and even just in general build crafting for the game that kind of wasn't there before. And I really like that. That pretty much covers everything. I can't really think of anything else that I can cover in terms of stat distribution. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed the video. Please make sure to subscribe, hit the bell below to get updated on new videos. I'm going to have build videos coming out. I'm going to be covering more content and talking about things as they pop up, and I would appreciate it. And if you're looking for a carry, once again, I'm live on Twitch recording this, and I'm playing trials every day, helping people for free. All you have to do is enter the raffle and have a mic pretty much, and that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you happen to like what you see, then please make sure to sub and click the bell for notifications on when new videos drop. If you're looking to get some live action Diffizzler gameplay, head on over to my Twitch, which I stream on pretty much daily. Also, if you want to say hi, I have a Twitter, and you can do that over there, or you can join my public Discord and say hi there. Love you guys. Until next time.